Is that what that means, live?
Hi, everybody. Rebecca Nelson, Wine Club Director here at Becker Vineyards, back with you yet again. We are going to be trying our 2018 White Wing tonight. So you've got a lovely, nice, crisp white wine in your glass, I hope. We've got our owner, Dr. Richard Becker, with us tonight. We also have our winemaker, John Leahy. And again, we have our fabulous assistant winemaker and enologist, Rachel Fanning. So we've got the three people that know the most about this wine on this broadcast for you tonight. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them, but I want to quickly remind everybody that we just sent out a reminder about the wines that we've got for next week. And there's definitely time to go ahead and place that order. We're releasing some library wines from our collection. So if you haven't ordered those yet, make sure you get on and do that quickly so you have them in time for the tastings next week. And with that, I will turn it over to John and Dr. Becker and Rachel. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Perfect. Cheers, Rebecca. Thank you again for another wonderful introduction. And again, Doc, why don't you lead us off in a couple of words, and then we'll dive into this wonderful white wing.
Just a couple words before the lighthearted banner about this wine I love, but what a horrible week we've had, maybe one of the worst in the history of our country. And I want to say that I know that everyone on our team and our family has great feeling for what's happened and what's happened to the people that are suffering from this. And just know that we all think and care very much about that. But let's talk about wine for a minute. Maybe a little escape from chaos will be good.
A little escape from chaos is always good, but and you're right, sir. We can't ignore our surroundings, but we can certainly take a break. And what better time to take a break than with our friends, family, and supporters and enjoy a great glass of wine. So
absolutely. Yeah.
So the white wing, and cheers, Rachel, by the way. Thank you for joining us again. Exactly. So I want everybody, this is our 2018 White Wing. It's a Sauvignon Blanc and a little bit of Semillon. The Sauvignon Blanc is from our front vineyard here in Stonewall, Texas. And the Semillon is from wonderful growers, the Binghams, up in Meadow area, up in the High Plains. So I want everybody to swirl, sniff, and taste. And then we're going to dive right into this. It's one of my favorite wines that we do at the winery. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, Doc, you are a resident Francophile. As much as I tease you, I'm kind of right there with you, though. However, when it comes to the Bordeaux, both white and red. So what made you all decide to plant Sauvignon Blanc in the front vineyard?
Well, I think I've always loved Sauvignon Blanc, and some of the first wines I tasted from Texas were Sauvignon Blanc from Ned Sims and from Bob Oberhelman. And Slaughter Leftwich made a wonderful Sauvignon Blanc. I think it really carried them for a number of years. Jim Johnson, that was his first assignment as a winemaker. Mm-hmm. And so I always loved the wine, and I thought it would be fun to plant it. So we planted these grapes in 1993 in the front vineyard, and they've survived everything: freeze, Pierce's disease, assaults, grasshopper plagues, you name it. And they're still there. It's quite beautiful. Yeah.
They even survived the 4 horsemen.
They're coming. Right. They're building a pipeline down the road.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think isn't apocalypse? Isn't that from the Greek for new beginnings?
Could be.
But yeah. So Rachel, you and I have dealt with this vineyard, and you, my good friend and colleague, have actually gone out there and pruned that vineyard. And it was just a little too hot for me, so I had to go hide in the air conditioning.
I think that's how our vineyard crew actually felt about me pruning. It was way too hot and I was way too slow, so they sent me back in after I was out there several days.
Yeah, right. Well,
longer than they wanted me.
Yes. Well, we got everybody involved too. We were shorthanded that year, so we got everybody out there pruning the grapes. So, what's your impression of this wine when you first smell and taste it?
So, as we were discussing this earlier before we went live, and my particular bottle is a little bit chillier than I prefer. I think it was probably, if it was at 50, I would be really surprised, but I think it was a little lower than 50. So it's been fun to let it open up, warm up a little bit so that you can catch more of the aromas and more of the volatiles as they express themselves. I love this wine. I really, really do. And I have loved, the 7 years that I've been here, I've loved all of the white wings. They're all pretty much similar. I mean, they've got a little differences as far as the composition, but we always stick with new French oak. or mixture of French oak, new and old, but it's always French oak. Predominantly, it is our estate Sauvignon Blanc. And for those who have been out here, as you're driving in, the very first vines that you see, that is a Sauvignon Blanc that goes into this wine. We really do grow it. And then a little bit of the Bingon Semillon, as you mentioned earlier. And as those proportions, as you blend them a little bit differently, I think it takes on different characters, but this has always been a really lovely wine.
No, I agree, and I'll go one step further and say that the wines they drink in paradise, we make in Stonewall, Texas. So Doc, you're getting a couple of comments. People want you to play the piano. I figure if we make him drink enough, he'll actually start it.
I turn over the camera. I can't do it. But I want to say about this wine, I really, I love Sauvignon Blanc, but I love French Sauvignon Blanc, the white wine of Bordeaux. And it's made in barrel. It has non-electric fermentation. It's blended with Semillon. May spend a year or two in barrel. That's what we're trying to make here. The funniest story about this wine is that we decided we would give it a fanciful name. So we decided to name it for the great Texas dove and dove hunting white wing. And we told John that, and he said, look, I know you're a doctor, but naming your wine right wing seems a little extreme. And we didn't do it. So we stuck with white wing.
Right. Yes. Okay. So I misheard. That was kind of funny. It's like, what? Yeah, but so it wouldn't be the first time. So the wine itself. So Sauvignon Blanc happens to be one of my favorite varietals, bar none, and I very much enjoy it. Ronald just asked how long can you lay it down. Ronald, you can lay this wine down for 10 years, buddy, without a problem. Any of our white wings you can. I'll stand behind that as long as it's properly stored, i.e. you're not in a lot of temperature fluctuation. I'm pretty confident that a Sauvignon Blanc ages very, very well. As a matter of fact, I'm enjoying some Sauvignon Blancs that I made back in 2001, 2002, where we're having some quite nice wines with that. This particular Sauvignon Blanc, our particular white wing, so we have fluctuated back and forth between mostly stainless steel ferment, mostly barrel ferment, gone back and forth with there. So this is a very nice blend of both stainless steel aged Sauvignon Blanc and barrel aged. I particularly like to put Sauvignon Blanc in brand spanking new French oak. And I love to age it along with Chardonnay. I like to age both of those varietals in new French oak for a couple of years. That is, and absolutely has brought both Dr. Becker and myself no end of great pleasure with the debates. So I think this is good. Let's get it out of barrel. Well, okay, give me a couple of weeks. 2 months later, did you get it out of barrel? Oh man, I forgot. Let me get to that. Finally, really? You're going to forget this week too? but the end result is a white Bordeaux that I think that we could put up against anybody in the international community. I'm going to turn this over to you, Doc, to get some impressions again about the wine itself and the inspiration behind White Wing. But on the wine itself, what are you getting out of that glass?
Well, it has a really complex mouthfeel of some vanilla and some of the spice coming from the oak, and then it has the white flowers that gardenia and so forth that present on the nose, and a wonderful finish. This is a great food wine, and that's what I see. What about you guys?
Absolutely.
Rachel? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I feel like probably I gave you a lot of words earlier when you asked me what I got off of this wine, and I didn't give you that part. So I was actually thinking that I get a lot of white peaches on this. Absolutely. White peaches, nice, not necessarily grassy notes, but like a really nice edge of some herbaceousness. Herbaceous is not even right. That even seems too green. Maybe just grass, little hay. Little haze probably is better.
Well, Sauvignon Blanc really it's two different creatures depending on the climate where it's grown. I mean, in a cooler climate, it is much more herbaceous, much more grassy. Some of those edges that we come to appreciate, like for example, another New World Sauvignon Blanc, New Zealand, you know, the old standby Cloudy Bay. Has a very, very grassy nose to it. It's much cooler, much more temperate climate there. Here in Texas, with the warmer climate that we have, we get a lot more of the tropical or floral notes out of it. We don't get as much of the grassy notes. And grassy notes, mild in Sauvignon Blanc, are fine, but too much can actually be a detraction. And I feel like it's a fault. It borderlines on being a fault on there.
I want to say about, so Sauvignon Blanc can be at two ends of a spectrum. In New Zealand, they actually harvest it much greener than we do, maybe 18 bricks.
Right.
And they even harvest some at 12 bricks or 14, which they call a green reserve, in case when the wine is finished, there's not enough cat pee and gooseberry.
Yep.
And so they can add some of the greener components back.
Yeah, well,
actually,
that cat pee is actually a sulfide issue from the green harvest. It's just like the funk from a really good Burgundy is actually the fault that we've come to accept as normal.
Has your cat had any role in this wine, John?
No, the cat, I try to keep the cat. I have a splat cat. He will jump into any body of water that's near him and we have to fish him out. So no.
That did not happen to a tank of wine.
No, it did not.
There's no cat pee in this, is that what you're saying?
No cat pee in the damn wine. But we did get a question. Okay, so we've gotten a question, and we'll make it relevant to this particular. The question in general, how's the weather affecting the grapes this year? Right now, we're fine in the hill country. They've had a little bit of ups and downs from a late freeze in the fall in the high plains. So, you know, Texas is not going to have the stellar amount of fruit harvest this year. But that being said, weather does affect us every year, and that's what makes this different every single year. Here in the hill country, our biggest concern right now, as we see this fruit setting, is a sudden hailstorm. That happened to us about 4 years ago, and it was heartbreaking. The front vineyard got just damaged beyond belief. The back vineyard didn't even get touched. And so, you know, you can go along perfect, everything's working well, and then 10 minutes later, it's like, well, I guess our harvest has changed now. But the weather in 2018 was really nice. We did have a cool start to that summer. But you can tell we get the cool start and then the warm finish here with that tropical fruit notes or the florals. Like you were mentioning before, the gardenia or the night blooming jasmine. I get a little boxwood in here and some peach. So
yeah, you know, on the temperature this year, it's hardly ever reached 90, and here we are June 1st. So for this growing season, we've been in the 70s and 80s for our highs. And that's going to be interesting. I think it's going to change, but we're certainly having a cool start.
Yes, we are. And this next week, it's going to change here in the hill country. We're going to hit up into the mid 90s. Finally start getting our stride, which I'm really looking forward to because we just finished bloom, and we're going to need some ripening time. So if you wanted to know about cats, we're joined by one here. Our little Torty. We call her the Princess of Darkness. So she gets into a lot of mischief. Anyway, again, Rachel's just like, I'm just drinking.
I know that was the cat that my daughter and I almost brought home one day.
Yes, yeah. There was some serious negotiation between your daughter and my wife, and I was actually on Grayson's side.
I know. I was not.
So somebody just asked, is a cool start a good thing or a bad thing? It's neither good nor bad. It's just something we have to deal with. Personally, right now, cool doesn't matter as long as it's not cold. It slows things down. It slows the metabolic rate down in the vine. And during veraison, during the addition of sugar, it may slow things down there. But what it allows is the development of phenolic ripeness, which are two different things, phenolics and sugar. You know, we measure sugar, phenolics we can measure as well, but as a winemaker, I'm more interested in the phenolics than I am the sugar, honestly. You know, the sugar and the pH tell me a certain story. The phenolics finish that story and make it a well-rounded story. So we picked this, phenolically, we picked very, very nice, I believe. And so what are we sitting at? 14.4 on the alcohol, which for a white wine is a little beefy, but you really can't tell in this wine when you taste it, when you smell it and sip it. You're not going to think high alcohol. I know a lot of people think 14 is high alcohol. It really isn't. If the wine is balanced, this is a superbly balanced wine. We managed to maintain some acidity. The Sauvignon Blanc did not go through malactic fermentation. The Semillon, however, did. So, we looked at that. But the Semillon is only about 5-7%, about 93-95% Sauvignon Blanc. So that's the other thing. And we just got a question for you specifically, Dr. Becker. How long can you age cat pee?
Well, it depends on the quality.
Okay.
I'm now so afraid to see what vials I have in my refrigerator in the lab next.
Right. No.
We have a lovely tortoiseshell cat here named Pebbles. And Pebbles likes to come around and sniff the wine glasses, but doesn't actually drink out of them. So she's a welcome portion of every meal.
Fermentation, Rachel. Let's hop on the fermentation about this and the techniques that we used with the Sauvignon Blanc, and then in comparison to some of our other white wines as well. But with the Sauvignon Blanc,
like you said earlier, we do get to play around and do a mixture of stainless steel fermentation and oak fermentations, and we usually do split this. So let me backtrack a little bit. We have within our Sauvignon Blanc vineyard, there are several different plantings from different years. So we have what we have been calling the old Sauvignon Blanc and the new Sauvignon Blanc.
Right.
We planted more, I can't remember right off the top of my head, several acres this past year. So now we have old, new, and newer. And I have told John we're not going to call it old, new, and newer and newest anymore. We're now going to have to start talking about years.
I was looking forward to that on a label. Newest Sauvignon Blanc.
With a little bit old and older. So this predominantly is a mixture of our, you said it was 1993 that it was planted, Doc? That's what I remembered also, 93.
93 was a year, yeah,
and
March.
Then I think 05, we planted more. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's right. I think it's right. So it's a mixture of the 93 and the 05 plantings. It's okay. So I'm getting all distracted, and I'll go down a rabbit hole with all of this. So let me just focus on your question. We are able to bring those two lots in, and they ripen relatively similarly, if not just within a week or so. Able to ferment some of it in stainless steel, and then which is a nice, really cool ferment, retains all of those nice fruit and floral characters. And then we're able to put the other half in oak barrels, which tends to ferment a little bit warmer. Yep, that's what we do for fermentations.
Yes.
Sorry.
No. It's fine. Well, but one of those things about fermenting in barrel, because it does ferment warmer, so you do lose some of the phenolics in a barrel ferment, where you gain a lot more of those nice nuances in the stainless steel when you do a cooler ferment. But the thing that I gain out of the barrel ferment is the mouthfeel, the body, the development of glycerol in there, especially when we can mix those lees up a little bit. At the tail end of fermentation, we keep them disturbed. During fermentation, the lees are naturally disturbed, so it gives a chance for those yeast to start developing. That body is so very important, especially in a white wine, because we don't have the skin contact that you have in a red wine, that you really want to gain some of that body out of a barrel ferment while you keep the floral and the more delicate notes intact in the stainless steel, and later coming back to blend. It's the same wine, but we still blend. So then I think this is probably and Rachel, you've run up against this too, when you automatically as a winemaker, you start talking blending. You're talking your own language, so you know what it is, but somebody who's not as familiar is going to hear blending, and they're going to think, oh, what other wines are in here? In this case, there is a little Semillon, but when we're talking about blending Sauvignon Blanc, we're splitting our Sauvignon Blanc into multiple groups during fermentation, and then coming back later after aging to blend them back. And that gives us a broader palette to paint with, if you will, if you don't mind that analogy. But like I said, I'm not cutting off my ear for anybody.
And that's a great point, because I really think that being able to blend that stainless steel fermentation with the oak fermentation, as you said, the stainless steel really provides that crispness and the floral and the fruit characters, where the oak fermentation, while it still does have floral and fruit characters, they're different,
Yeah.
And all of that body, and being able to blend those back together really provides this whole rounded wine.
Yeah. So I want to address this next question to Gary Clark, who just asked it. No, Gary, I'm not using barrels that are half French oak and half American oak, no matter how many times you say it. So, we have a very good fan and very nice man who keeps saying, do you ever use half American, half French oak? And he means literally the hybrid barrels that are either stave mixed or heads of French or heads of American with staves of the other. And no, I don't like that confusion. To me, it's a very muddled way of making wine. Just that's my personal opinion. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong to make wine in those barrels. It's just what I prefer. So Doc, what, oh, sorry, go ahead, Rachel. You were about
No, I was actually going to touch on what you were saying. And I feel like this starts, a long time ago with Doc, that we really have a preference for French oak on our whites. And we see that consistently with our Viognier, with our Chardonnay, with our Semillon, the Marsanne, the Roussanne, and our Sauvignon Blanc. We really have a preference of what we do here. And
right.
Our program revolves a lot around French oak.
Yeah, so, and I didn't want to chase Gary out. I hope, Gary, I wasn't trying to be mean. I was like, no. So anyway, Doc, back to the wine. So
yeah.
What do you notice in this wine as it goes from cool to room temperature, opening up over the course of an hour or so? What differences do you get from freshly opened to to aerated?
Well, I think certainly as it aerates, the flower character comes back. The fruit note is more prominent. When it's colder, you mainly taste the sort of the acidity but the glycerin is there throughout. I think everything, the expression of the wine is much better as it warms up. A good way to cover the faults of a bad wine is to serve it cold. You really can't taste it. It really needs to be at about 60, 65 degrees to assess the wine.
Yeah, I do. I actually prefer this, and I know Rachel, you had just taken a bottle chilled out right before we started, and you were sitting doing exactly what I was doing because I did the same thing, trying to warm it up. But I agree. I prefer Sauvignon Blanc a little bit warmer. It's a very nice wine. It really is if you're not a great wine drinker, and we've had a couple questions, not a big white wine fan, what would you recommend to start with? And one person said, I'm not a fan of Sauvignon Blanc. I am sorry that you're not, but something that might help. Sit down to a nice dinner that you're normally going to serve your Cabernet or a Merlot with, counter pour a glass of white wine and try it side by side with the same food and go back and forth. It's the adult version of playing with your food. So, and it's fun. But it's a great way to discover, especially any varietals that you're not familiar with. But
I want to say that the most fun for us is to go around in the barrel room and take the thief and take little samples of these wines out of the barrel. So the temperature is probably 58 or 60 degrees, and all of the aroma that's so present, so redolent, comes out when you open the barrel. And that's when I think you most appreciate the wine. That's the magic moment for wine tasting. And so the goal is to get through everything, through the final stages of production, get the wine bottled, and then have it taste that way when it comes out of the bottle 3 years later. That's one of the great magic steps of winemaking. And you do this wonderfully, there's no question. But the great experience is to go around in the barrel shay with a thief, also in French known as a pipette or pipette.
Pipette, yep.
Little samples of wine out of the barrels and taste them. That's the most beautiful experience in the wine industry, I think.
Well, now people are wondering if they can buy a barrel of wine, and unfortunately, we can't sell you a barrel of wine unless you are a winery. But
yes, so I know, but we had one of the stories in our winery is maybe 10 years ago. We had a lost barrel of Cabernet. So 2 years of aging passed, all the wine got taken back in the tank and bottled, and we overlooked one barrel. So now we're 3 years in the cellar, 4 years in the cellar, and a gentleman from Houston comes around and we're tasting, and I said, this is the lost barrel, let's taste it. So we tasted, and he said, I love this. So this barrel had Cabernet Sauvignon from our property in oak for 4 years. It had been very well treated, very well protected, topped, all the things that you do to keep the wine healthy? And he said, I'll buy this barrel. And I said, well, it's 25 cases. He said, I'll take 25 cases. So we processed that barrel, we bottled it, and shipped 25 cases to Houston. And he was very proud of it. I think we made a little note on the label. This was his really special select. And I think there were a lot of Christmas presents and whatnot. But
Rachel, did you just hear that we could age our wine for 4 years and we don't have to worry about it? I mean, I heard that we could set some aside, didn't you?
I heard permission to lose barrels.
Well, let's not lose them, but let's lose them.
And it was
coming from the guy who thinks he hide them.
John, it was Higney, Missouri, American Oak, Cabernet Sauvignon from our property. It was beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the A&K barrels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I do? I think we should age our Cabernet from our property again. Then let's try it in the American Oak and the French Oak. Let's lose a couple of barrels.
Yeah, I'm for it.
Yeah, this is great. So what?
All in the name of the experiment.
Exactly. You know, I it's funny because I actually love aging wine for about 36 plus months. And I think 3 years in barrel is a nice, especially with Cabernet or Merlots, but coming from a background where we were able to age for quite some time, it really is a better experience to me. You get a wholly different wine. There's nothing wrong with wine aged for 18 or 24 months. It's just that extra maturation time in the barrel does significantly change the wine, more so than just aging it in bottle. You know, wine does continue to age once it's bottled. It's the only basically alcoholic beverage that does continue to age once it's bottled. You know, the beer and other spirits do not age once they're bottled. So wine is unique in that respect, but you also get a different creature, the longer, the shorter. And this is an ongoing education. It doesn't matter if you spent 2 years or, 5 decades in the industry, you constantly learn like, oh, this worked well for us. Well, back to this wine, 2018, Rachel, was the first year we used that bacteria on the Sauvignon Blanc.
Right.
So we,
and I still cannot remember the name of it.
We call it TD for short. I couldn't pronounce the Latin name on it either right now. So
I think it's actually a non-Saccharomyces.
It is.
Yeast.
Yeah.
So
John, as this wine has been open, now the lychee is coming forward. You get that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what I was just thinking, Doc.
Watch wine evolve. And one thing happens in the barrel and another in the glass, another in the bottle.
We can really confuse people and say, I'm not quite sure if it's gardenia or linden flower that I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
Every Somm in America hates me. I'm fascinated with this wine, and I'm fascinated with our White Wing program all the way from start to finish. So this is doing very, very well. All right, so we've covered a little bit of barrels here, but what we haven't talked about is actually how long we've aged this. So the 2018 is just been recently released. I think, do we have the date down there? Yeah, so we bottled it in December of 2019, so just 6 months ago. So, and we're just now getting into it. So it spent a nice long time in barrel aging. So, we were able to get a couple of years. So the longer we can age a wine at the winery in the barrel or take care of it and then put it into a good vessel for you to take home, you're pretty assured that it's going to last a long time. If you have a nice, cool place to keep it, you should be able to age this for quite some time. Personally, I like Sauvignon Blancs that are 5 to 7 years old. That, to me, they start to reach that nice pinnacle right there.
I have to share a little something funny that I read today. And it was misunderstandings about what happens in the wine and why wines are good and what consumers expect. And the story was that this couple walks in and they want the wine. How'd they go? They want the wine in which they've scraped the leaves. Did you scrape the leaves? Because if you didn't scrape the leaves, I don't want the wine. And this tasting room associate was like, I have no idea what these people are talking about. Scraping the leaves. What is this? They meant stir the leaves.
I'm going to put that on the next work order just to see what the guys in the cellar do. You need to scrape the leaves.
So as you were talking, it reminded me about, that we do get the opportunity as our white wines are aging in barrel, that they do get to sit on lees. And if we're really good and everything is safe and healthy and happy, they get to sit on the lees until we rack it to put it back to, or to blend it, to put it to bottle.
Absolutely.
And that's absolutely one of these things that I think that's part of what gives it that viscosity in that body. We
Okay.
scrape
The leaves. That's an excellent. We'll just start calling it that. Food. We're getting a lot of questions here. About food pairings, what you would put with the Sauvignon Blanc. So let's start with you, Rachel. What
I
food?
knew you were going to say that. I wasn't prepared at all.
You want me to go to Doc and give you a couple seconds?
No, you know what? I'm going to run with it. I know you guys are going to have amazing answers. I absolutely would vie for white fish, nice crisp salads, and maybe a chicken Alfredo. And I've been on the keto plan, right, for several months now. So I'm kind of excited about the idea of a chicken Alfredo pasta. Pasta sounds lovely.
Yeah, pasta does sound really lovely. And chicken Alfredo, that's awesome. Doc, people want to know where your straw is. So, okay, so Doc, what food would you pair with the Sauvignon Blanc?
I think anything with beer block sauce on it would be fabulous. Dover sole.
How can you go wrong with butter?
That's right. That's what the French said. And Dover sole, any fish dish that would have beer block.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the immortal words of Paula Deen, butter is love. So
I like that.
Well, I think that's great. I actually, I'm going to go very simple on this. I've had this with what I will call a grown-up grilled ham and cheese. It's a really nice ham with manchego, but I love this wine with manchego. So anything you can eat it, just a piece of manchego on a cracker with this, or put it on something. But that manchego does very, very well. See, again, Rachel, I want you to know, one, I didn't mention barbecue. And two, I didn't mention lamb. So yeah, I think this is an absolutely fantastic one. So yeah, and people are really on your chicken Alfredo, by the way. We're rolling through here. And then somebody mentioned crab cakes with sweet taters. So sweet potatoes. I'm going to stay away from the sweet potatoes with this, but I'll go crab cakes with you. I'll double
any day.
Yeah, any day. Well, I do want to mention, so next week, I know it's Monday and we've got the rest of this week to get through. So Wednesday, we are doing, what are we doing on, I know Friday is the Reserve Grenache. What are we doing on Wednesday?
Oh, it's our distribution Cabernet Sauvignon.
That's right, the 588.
The one with the pretty paper label. It's like a linen paper label.
Yep.
We released it for the first time in 2014. So the one we'll be trying on Wednesday is the 2017 Cabernet Sauvignon.
That's perfect. And then Friday, we're very fortunate. Shh, don't tell anybody, but the grower Drew Talent's going to be on with us. So we're pretty excited about that. Food Friday with Drew. But so the Reserve Grenache on Friday. So next week we have released, so everybody knows, for next week, we're doing a vertical of the Wilmoth Cabernets. So our 3-pack is all Wilmoth Cabernet for next week. So for you wonderful red wine lovers, we'll be doing that. It's the 2014, 15, and 16 vintages of the Wilmoth Cabernet Sauvignon. So that's going to be kind of fun coming up for next week. So any final words? Anybody want to get a final jab in about the wine? I want everybody to sniff and smell and taste one final time before we do our final cheers. So, all right. So I want to thank everybody out there for joining us tonight. Rachel, what do you got?
I was just going to say, so we've talked a little bit as it was colder and as it's evolved, and now we've let it evolve for 30 minutes. Any huge differences?
I do. I get a very big difference. You know, when I first opened this, I got a lot more grassy notes out of it. I'm getting much more florals out of it as it warms up. So I'm really good with it. Well, everybody, I want to wish everybody a very safe week. Our thoughts and hearts go out to everybody getting through just the pandemic, getting through a lot of other stuff this week too going on. You know, if I could send a giant I love you and a big hug out to everybody, I would. But I also want to thank everybody for joining us here, and we look forward to
Well said.
looking you again on Wednesday. Until then, cheers, good wine, great health. We hope to see you all on Wednesday. Cheers.
Our hearts with everyone. You bet. Yeah.
Absolutely. Everybody.
Thank you.